So this morning, we are got a lot to get through. We're going to hear a bit about the Anne Frank Trust Symposium meeting taking place that Lorraine's organised, I think in Millom, is that right, Lorraine? Taking place in a couple of weeks' time. Fascinating story about the Lumberjills, which I'd never come across that word before. Really interesting story about female, if I can say female lumberjacks. I've probably already put my foot in it there. People that worked in the forest of Grizedale that Hazel and Joanna are pulling together. Really interesting story. Ella Jarman-Pinto is going to tell us about a beautiful collaboration that she's doing with another artist. Again, looking at strong female representatives from history and mythical females as well, women. So Ella's going to tell us much more about that. I've got a lovely little film to show about that. So I've got a nice little film about the Lumberjills too. Susan Hinde is putting together an exhibition in Keswick about textiles, and a really interesting story of how that part of the world did a lot of manufacturing of textiles along the Grizedale River there. So we're going to hear about that. And then Fliss has got an amazing open studio coming up. Have you ever been to Fliss's house? It's the most beautiful little house in Little Clifton, which I can see in my head has been transformed into a studio already. So we're going to hear about what Fliss is doing, and I'd encourage you to visit that just outside Cockermouth if you can over the weekend. So that is the plan for this morning. So we'll start off with, here comes Colin. We'll start off with Lorraine, and welcome to Sophie, by the way, who's here for the first time, who's just put a couple of lines about herself in chat. Really welcome to, and you're really welcome to be with us here, Sophie. That's Sophie Broadgate. Right, so we're going to kick off with looking at this gathering of the Anne Frank Trust. So if you remember, Lorraine came on a few weeks ago just to introduce herself. She's just moved to Barrow. And the Anne Frank Trust is a national organisation, and we now have a Cumbrian branch of it. So Lorraine, I've got your slides, which I shall get up, and over to you to introduce yourself to people and tell us what's going on.
Hi everybody, good morning. Yes, my name's Lorraine Jones, and I started working for the Anne Frank Trust in May, really getting into schools and communities September onwards. And today I just want to actually start with an invitation to the Millom event, which is on the 8th of December. So next slide, please. Thank you. Where we're now going to launch on a bigger scale the work that we're doing with schools and communities. The work is based on and inspired by the work of Anne Frank, her literature, the diary, as well as obviously the experiences and her life story. The Millom event is a 2-hour event that you're more than welcome to attend, a networking event with people right across Cumbria. The event is led by young people, will be hosted by young people who I've worked with over the last few months. And we've got some amazing people attending, such as Dr. Martin Stern, MBE, Holocaust survivor, who I'll be bringing from Lancaster to Barrow and escorting him across Cumbria to speak with lots of people at different schools. So you're more than welcome. If you'd like to RSVP, then we'll make sure we've got enough refreshments for you and space. Next slide, please. So it's just a quick review, really, of the work that we've done already in Cumbria. I've completed 2 major community projects and brought together various artists to work with young people. Since September, we now have 16 young people who are applying to become ambassadors, who will continue the work to take action against prejudice and discrimination in their communities. I've worked with 11 schools, secondary and primary. Examples of the work that we've done: Furness Academy, 60 pupils took part in what we call Voices for Equality programme as part of the Barrow community setting at the library. And they also attended a trip to Lake Windermere Holocaust project. Ormsgill School attended the Barrow Community Project, again taking part in the Voices for Equality. And they worked with Signal Film and Media, producing their own films on addressing discrimination. And those films will be presented at the Millom event, the launch event. And we I delivered workshops to year 5 and 6 at the school as follow-up. St Pius worked with local musician Ashton Dobson, creating songs around prejudice and discrimination, just basically how to find their voice through poetry and songwriting, which was brilliant. And then in the summer, I worked with some Millom school pupils and John Ruskin pupils from Coniston, and we created a film on invisible disabilities, which will also be shown at the event. Next slide, please. And we've had about 800 people now take part in core programmes and workshops, which is a great start. We obviously want to expand right across Cumbria now. The 2 projects that we completed were held at Barrow Library and Millham, the Beggars Theatre. The exhibition was seen by over 3,600 people at Barrow Library. The exhibition has proved popular at the Beggars Theatre, and it will have been seen by 2,500 people, stroke 3,000 people when it leaves the venue on, well, it'll be the 9th of December after the launch. I've worked with various organisations, in contact with lots of organisations now, and I'm really open to working with many more people and looking at how we collaborate in this work that we're doing. One example of that is working with Barrow Full, where they're working with the director from Coventry Belgrade Theatre and working with young people, boys in particular who are 15 years old, on gender equality and who they are as young men in the Barrow community. And then what is amazing is Martin Stern is travelling from London to come and visit us in Cumbria, and he's going to speak to 4 schools and present to over 400 pupils and staff as part of the Cumbria launch. He's passionate and energised in sharing his story and experience. So that's an amazing experience for me, as well as all the young people that he'll reach as part of that. And last slide, which is literally, please feel free to come to the event, and it would be great to meet you all in person, or if you can attend, or if you want to expand our contact further, then please do get in touch. I think it's going to be a lovely event, a celebration of what we've done so far, but also just expressing our aspirations for the new year and moving forward. And that's a very short presentation from me.
Great, thank you, Lorraine. And just briefly, how are you finding? You've been here for a few months now. How are you finding? You've been received with interest and intrigue.
I think the challenge is schools are very busy in delivering curriculum, which is the right thing. But we are getting into schools now, and positive words are being sort of people are saying, I've heard about this now, please can you come into our school? And so we are reaching a wider sort of audience now, which is amazing. I met with the hate crime lead, who explained about the issues across Cumbria. So part of me was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of work to do here. But in turn, how the young people are receiving the programmes is just incredible. And some of the projects that they want to get off the ground, Furness Academy, we've got a group of young boys who want to create a mixed gender football team. You've got Chetwynd kids who want to get the first boys netball team off the ground. You've got young people wanting to address racism in primary schools and working with young people aged between 5 and 7. So this peer education programme is starting to evolve now. And the fact that we've managed to get 16 applications for the ambassadors programme, that's sort of measuring the success already. Yeah, I'm finding it enjoyable, rewarding, and it's really good to be back in Cumbria as well after 23 years away.
All right, great. It's a quick question from Sue.
Yes, just wondering, are you only aiming it at young people or aiming adults as well?
The Anne Frank Trust work with aged 9 to 15 years old, but as an Anne Frank worker in Cumbria, I'm really happy to meet with groups of adults as well to share the work and to present the work that we do as part of the sort of promotional activity, but also to share the invaluable work that we do. So if there's any groups that would like to hear more, I'm more than happy to present or speak with them.
It may sound rather twee, but WI groups are always very receptive, and that will then cascade. I do talks to one and I end up being asked to go to several. Just an idea, and I know it's the WI, but don't knock them.
Oh no, never. I think that's a great idea, actually. I've worked with the WI before in past previous roles. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, especially as their sort of campaigning arm.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much, Lorraine. Good luck with that. I know you've got to step away quite soon, but I hope it goes well in Millham and you continue to have success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Let's move on then to from Anne Frank to Lumberjills. which, as I said earlier, a word I hadn't come across before, but fortunately we've got a bit of an expert on the call this morning who is working with Grizedale Forest and Hazel from, is it Forestry Commission, Hazel, have I got that right?
Forestry England.
Forestry England, thank you. I should read what it says on your window a bit better, shouldn't I? To tell us what this is about, what this word means, and what's been going on there. So, Joanna, over to you, and I've got that film lined up and your slides lined up, so just cue me in as and when you want to, but over to you.
Thank you. Hazel, do you want to just introduce the projects first?
Yeah, I can do very quickly. Yeah, thank you. So I curate the program at Grizedale Forest, and we have an exhibition space there. And I when I started at Forestry England, I'd never heard of the Lumberjills, and it was just someone that mentioned them. So it's long been a want of mine to do a show, and it's the 80th anniversary this year. So very, very briefly, and I won't go into who they are because Joe will. I reached out to Joe and said, you're an expert on this, help us create an amazing exhibition. I'm going to put a call out and find out stories and images from locals about the Grizedale Lumberjills, because they were across the UK, and make this a really meaningful project, personal encounter of the Lumberjills at Grizedale. So if anybody knows anybody who knew them, please do pass on my contact details, and we'll try and make this as rich a story as possible about the Grizedale Lumberjills. So over to Joe.
Yeah, so thank you, Hazel. Yeah, when I first spoke to Hazel, I thought this is like a dream come true for me to actually create a space, an event to celebrate the Lumberjills. So I first found out about them about 12 years ago when I was working for the Forestry Commission, that's what it was known then. And same, I'd never heard of them. And then, you know, I discovered there was thousands of women working in the forest in World War I and World War II, felling trees with an axe and saw. And I just thought, how come I don't know about this? And all the women I work with didn't know about them either, the foresters. And so I just thought this is a story that I really want to know about. Plus, I was probably a bit of a lumberjill at heart because in my younger years, my dad bought me an axe for Christmas one year. So maybe if I'd been born 50 years earlier, I would have been one myself. But do you want to play the video now? And then you can see.
Yes, I will. Okay, I'll just line it up, and then we will go. Sound on. Can everyone see Jolly Good Fellas Lumberjill logo?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Some girls are jolly good fellas. That seems strange. Take a good look at these sturdy lumberjills on their way to fell their daily bag of forest giants, somewhere in Scotland. Felling trees may harden the muscles, but see what it does to the dimples. Setting the axe head keeps it as keen as the girls are themselves. That's for luck. There's a knack and a great deal of effort in swinging an axe, especially for a girl who's never swung anything heavier than a handbag. A smile goes with a smite, and another sapling bites the dust. And to see Sue saw so is certainly a sight for sore peepers. Watch the rhythm of it and the energy. Whew, look what you've done, Flo. After the felling, the trimming or cleaning off as it's called. Then the trunks are sawn into short lengths for easier handling. The towing chain is looped over the end of the log, and off it goes to the wood pile. Dorothy and Dobbin are the best of pals. Whoever would have thought that among these sturdy log rollers are a nurse, shop assistant, usherette, teacher, and so on. A mixed company, but all jolly good fellows.
Thank you. Just a brilliant film, isn't it? Just shows you the attitudes of the time to the women as well. So I'm sure you probably got a few comments about that.
Dorothy, Dobbin, and Dimples. LEDs I take away from that. Oh, anyway, carry on, Joe. Sorry.
Yeah, do you want to show the slides now? So I just really wanted to meet some of these women that had done the job in World War II. And so these are some of the women that I met. I traveled the country. I met about 60 of them. Lady Edna in top left, she was worked as a spinner in the woolen mills in Yorkshire. Audrey was wanted to become a teacher, but her parents said that it wasn't the time to invest in a career for a daughter when she'd be getting married and having children. So it pained her to the day that I met her that she wasn't allowed to carry on with her schoolwork. And then there's Violet, bottom left, who I met in Cornwall. She worked in a milk bar and making clotted cream and coffees and milkshakes. And then Dorothy, bottom right, she was a hairdresser and she literally swapped her scissors and comb for an axe and 6-foot crosscut saw during the wartime. So it was really extraordinary what these women did and where they came from. Next slide, please. So the group of women that worked in forestry in 1942 became known as the Women's Timber Corps, and that was their official title. But you'll notice that it took 2 or 3 years to get that title because of the prejudice against the women, but they didn't think they could do the job. But this is one of the first cohorts of the Women's Timber Corps, where 120 women were trained in various camps across the country in 4 lines of work. And I love this picture. They look like a real army of women. They've got grubby knees and axes over their shoulders, and they're very happy and smiling. So next slide, please. So at the beginning of the war, they really didn't think that the women could do this job because, of course, it was a tough man's job and women were the fairer sex. So originally they said the women that they would allow to work in forestry would be the really clever women that had been to university and studied maths. Now, there wasn't that many women that had done that in the 1940s, but they wanted these women to do this job, which required them to operate a tape measure to measure the width of trees. So, I make a bit of a joke about that because I think they were slightly overqualified, but, they were working out the cubic quantity of wood in trees and to calculate the timber supplies and wages. So they were involved with money side of things. Next slide, please. So those ladies were called measurers, but meanwhile, there's all these other women or other jobs that needed doing, like felling the trees. And I met this lady, Enid, who was from the Scottish Women's Timber Corps, and she had just missed out on a chance to compete in the Olympics in 1938. So she was a really incredible athlete. And when she joined up as a Lumberjill, within 4 weeks, she was promoted to supervisor and put in charge of 40 women and training them to chop down trees with an axe and saw. Next slide, please. So the 4 lines of work were felling trees with an axe, which was very skillful work, which the women were very good at because they could follow instructions. Next slide. And once the trees were down, they would cut them to length for pit props using bow saws. The wood was used for pit props down the mines, for shipbuilding, for telegraph poles, railway sleepers, Spitfires and Mosquito aircraft. Also for chestnut palings were used for D-Day landing trackway. So these women look quite young. Mostly they signed up at the age of 17, but they were as young as 16 because they lied about their age and wanted to do their bit for their war like their brothers. And some in Scotland were as young as 14. Next slide, please. So they were also involved in the haulage of the wood from, as you saw in the packing newsreel, working with horses. Often these women were brought from big cities, northern cities, as another form of evacuation out into the forests, but they didn't really know how to work with horses and drive tractors. Next slide, please. You can see they had to drive these massive caterpillar tractors, and they often had to fix them because they were quite unreliable. But they needed those to drag out the huge trees from the forest to the roadside, where they'd be loaded up onto lorries. Next slide. And this haulage work was a bit more like weightlifting, where they'd load up the lorries and they got muscles where they never knew they had muscles before. The common practice then, because pit props were so urgent and in demand for the coal mines, was that the girls would load the lorries, jump on top, hang on for dear life while they drove down to the railway station before they then loaded them into the wagon. Very dangerous practice. Next slide, please. But they didn't only fell the trees, they were also during winter time replanting the forest. So they replanted millions and millions of trees during the wartime. And this is a group of women from Kielder Forest, which really wasn't very big at the time, but it is now. And they were doing the planting. Next slide. So having met so many of these women, the thing that they said to me that came across was that they absolutely loved the freedom that this job gave them. They were out away from towns and cities, out in nature, away from the rules of society about how women should behave. They could sit astride a log with their legs apart. They could smoke a pipe. They could fell 10-ton trees, drive articulated lorries, and calculate the figures that the government needed for wartime timber supplies. So they got really confident, physically very strong, and they were an incredible bunch of diverse women from all backgrounds. Those measurers that started at the beginning were promoted and put in charge of forestry operations, and sometimes the men. There was, in the end, there was between 15 and 18,000 women working in the forests. They together working with various different groups of men, prisoners of war, and itinerant workers, Irish Home Rule workers, conscientious objectors. They produced 18 million tons of wood, which was 60% of our timber needs during the war. And they, did a pretty good job. So anything else? Next slide, please. Written 2 books about the Lumberjills. The first one, Lumberjills, Britain's Forgotten Army, is the interviews with the women, written as a history book. That's about all the women I met. Wonderful, wonderful stories about their times in the woods. Very, very funny stories and just incredible things they got up to. And then I love the Lumberjills so much, I wanted to give it a broader reach. So I wrote a novel about them that came out on Remembrance, just before Remembrance Day this year, to celebrate the 80th anniversary. And it's the first in a series of novels. And so absolutely wonderful now that Grizedale is doing an exhibition and putting it into a physical place. Next slide, please. Hazel has already done a bit of research, and after putting a call out, she received these 2 amazing photographs of the Grizedale Lumberjills. Absolutely wonderful picture. I just love this picture so much. Just, a group of girls just hanging out together in the forest, looking very natural. And I don't know, Hazel, do you want to sort of come back in here and talk about anything else you want to share about the project?
No, thank you, Jo. It's been brilliant working with Jo, because she's done so much research, and for us at Forestry England, inclusion is a really important journey for us still, and these women were so much part of the journey that we're continuing today. And to get these 2 images sent in, and from people that says, this is my auntie, I'll find out more. I've had some amazing emails this morning actually from people who put up some of the Lumberjills in their house, and they would like to tell us about them. So it's just a fantastic story about telling people about the history of timber in our country, and why we were set up, the Forestry Commission originally, now we're Forestry England, and also the importance of these women and telling their story and celebrating these amazing people. So yeah, really looking forward to the show, which starts in May next year. We'll have lots of events along the way as well. So thank you, Cumbria Arts and Culture Network, for just helping us start the journey.
Lots of interest, I think, about this. Kate says definitely beats writing arts council applications for a living.
Yeah, absolutely, Kate. Good luck.
Who coined Lumberjill? Who coined that sort of word? Any idea?
It was I think it was the Northern Mail or one of the, I can't remember which paper, but it was a paper where I first heard about it, well, the sort of first dated thing, and that was just before, I think, the Women's Timber Corps was officially set up in 1942, so about 80 years ago. And then it was used, as you heard, in the Pathé newsreel and elsewhere in papers and things. But yeah, a very common term then after that used.
And they were all over the country, were they? You know,
yeah, literally from Scotland down to Cornwall and everywhere.
And was there anywhere else in Cumbria apart from Grizedale that you're aware of that they may have been, you know, busy doing their thing?
No, it's an area that I didn't find much about in my research, so I'm really excited to find out about. Really exciting to hear that people have put them up, because I've wondered whether that might be a route to finding out about them, because they had to find their own billets all the time. They were moving from forest to forest, and they had to knock on people's doors and say, "Can we come and stay here?" which was really tough for them. But that would be amazing.
Yeah, and we knew of one person that stayed in the village, just in the forest, Satterthwaite, and on the Satterthwaite Parish Council there was one image, amazing image of her kind of going with these huge trees that had been felled that were telegraph poles, and there's lots of lovely stories about her and her contribution as she stayed and life after the Lumberjills as well. So yeah, these women really are part of our culture, but it's an unknown culture, and I've tried to find out quite a bit. So it's only through people helping us that we'll be able to tell the full story, really, which is so far is a fantastic process, and to share that and to then put it in the wider context of the Lumberjills across the UK, I think is really important as well.
Fantastic. Well, do keep popping stuff into social media channels of the network, and obviously you've got other networks as well, and reaching out, because it's great, isn't it, when you suddenly get someone to forward with those two photographs, for example, that you just shown at the end there of that was actually in Grizedale. You know, that's what a find. And I bet there's other stuff in drawers and under cupboards and, you know, on top of wardrobes all over the place.
I'd love to find out if anyone on the call had heard of the Lumberjills before this, because I hadn't, and it's just a really good measure to see interest and also the work how important this work is that Joe's started, and we'd like to just build on. So no one interested.
So did you want to come in briefly?
I'd heard of them, but I can't tell you where from. I think probably the WI.
Possibly, and I wondered whether WI might have some information there, Sue. I wonder if your networks might be able to help us surface any more stories or connections about the Grizedale ones. That would be wonderful.
Well, if it's not urgent, I could maybe do a bit of research.
Sue Allen, have you heard of them before?
Yes, I have, and that was from some land girls at Lazenby near Penrith, because I did a feature about them for it was an offshoot of Cumbria Life called Cumbria Past, I think, about his history donkeys years ago. And I interviewed some of the land girls, and they were amazing, and their stories. And they told me about the Lumberjills as well, but I didn't actually meet any. But Cumbria Life magazine would be a good place to contact, and they could run a piece. They'd love to show those two photographs, and that might draw in a few people.
Good
yes,
idea.
Great idea. Thank you, Sue.
Jay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back. I seem to recall having some discussions in Keswick about Lumberjills working in the forestry above Bassenthwaite and around the Keswick area and being billeted in Bassenthwaite village. I seem to recall it was a conversation I had in the pub in Bassenthwaite many years ago, but I can't remember any of the details. If I can drag anything up from the back of my mind, I'll drop a contact in and see if I can ratchet anything additional up. But I'm sure there was some girls working up in that forestry up at the back of Bassenthwaite Lake.
Thank you, Jay. That would be amazing.
Joe and Hazel, if you want to put your contacts into chat, and then people know how to contact you as and when they might remember things or meet people who can help you. That's what this network is about to a large extent. It's just putting people in contact with each other. I love projects like this. I love unearthing pretty recent history, actually, but it's in corners of the world that we didn't really know stuff happened, or we didn't think it happened in the way that it did. So, Joanna, what a great interest you have. And thank you for sharing those beautiful images. Again, I love it when you see, people later in life holding up images of themselves, as a younger person doing something different. It's fascinating to see. So thank you very much for telling us about that this morning. And I look forward later next year, Hazel, in coming back to it and revisiting it and seeing it in all its glory and coming down to see it as well. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Lovely stuff.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of women of history, we're not that Ella Jarman-Pinto is necessarily a woman of history herself, but she's involved in a project which is looking at women of history and of myths. So Ella, I'm going to hand over to you now to tell us about what you're doing with the crowdfunder. And I have that lovely film on the crowdfunder page lined up for when you want to talk about that as well. So Ella Jarman-Pinto, over to you.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I was just really taken by what we've just heard about the Lumberjills and how much, who writes the history and how quickly things can be forgotten in order to benefit certain aspects of society. And that's essentially what we're looking at as well. So it's myself. I'm a storytelling composer. I write music that tells stories of positive change, whether that's in film or to word, song, concert music. And I've been working with this incredible poet called Jo Brandon, and we've known each other for years and years and years. And we were commissioned by BBC Radio 3 for International Women's Day, and that kind of fired us off. And then we just said, let's write an album of songs. Let's do it. And our particular interest is women in history, historical and often legendary women, but, where they say, oh, there's no evidence that this person exists. It's like, well, who says that? Who says that? If we remember them this many hundreds of years later, then, it could be a memory rather than, an oral memory rather than something that has historical fact, as it were. So these people really interest us, and particularly the women who found various ways of escaping the constraints of society. So maybe now is actually a good time to play the film, and then I'll explain a little bit more about the women afterwards.
Can you all see Lemon Verbena on the screen? Great, here we go.
Yeah.
Sometimes lives are wasted. Sometimes they are dust.
Hi, I'm Jo.
Hi, I'm Ella.
And this is our Kickstarter campaign for our album, Lemon Verbena. Lemon Verbena is an album of songs that we've written together. We're long-term musical collaborators. I'm a poet.
And I'm a composer. And this album explores and celebrates the lives of extraordinary women throughout history. Don't let them take keys. Don't be a guest in your own life. Lingering by the door. Just sit or stand and be archwife. And leave if you are greedy for adventure. Eat till your stomach's sore. Take what you can and more. Strapped on my back, words from a woman wise. So last year, Jo and I were commissioned by BBC Radio 3 to create a song called Plango, a Cure Lament. And it was such an incredible process that it fired us up to do more. And we applied for the Wild Plum Arts residency made at the Red House. And we were also very generously funded by PRS Foundation for our time to create this album. And we spent just a magical week sitting side by side
at the piano, me with my pen and paper, you composing there sort of off the cuff. And it was just like a magical collaborative week, wasn't it?
It
And
really
then,
was.
you know, being able to explore these amazing women, being able to immerse ourselves in their stories, and think about, you know, how we wanted to frame their lives, and, you know, to think of ourselves, our creative selves as well.
And that's how this album came about.
So each track on the album is inspired by an incredible woman, or in some cases, incredible women. We have medieval mystics like Marjorie Kempe and Julian of Norwich. We have Mary Tofts, a woman famed for giving birth to rabbits. And we have opera singer and sword fighter Morpan.
We have pirate Jacot de la Haye, poet and author Ursula K. Le Guin, and also we really wanted to honour the many, many wise women lost to history.
Green boys, they thrust convention like long swords, burdened by heft, still they stop. I would have burned all their bodies to run with you, miss.
So all the funds that we raise in the Kickstarter will go towards recording, producing and releasing this album to the world.
It's really important to us that everybody involved in the album is paid professionally. The album is about unheard voices, and we really want to represent that in the producing of the album too. So thank you so much for watching our video.
We really would be so grateful if you could share it widely and consider contributing if you can.
We can't wait to share our songs with you.
What a great film.
Thank you. Joe's partner, Marcos Avlonitis, is a filmmaker, and he really, really kindly put that together. He came here, and you might recognize my kitchen. But essentially, I just wanted to kind of share quickly more about, if I can actually find out how to make my computer work. I wanted to share more about the women themselves, because it's something we don't go into the film. But so, for example, we have Marjorie Kempe, who was a, I think 11th century visionary and mystic. And she had 14 children. But after the birth of her first child, she experienced visions. And in nowadays, and certainly research nowadays says that that could be postpartum psychosis. So it's like, how do you deal with not being in society, with these visions, with this experience of having had your first child, going on to have 14 more? You know, how do you make that fit and make yourself safe? You know, certainly when you have Christianity and superstition, you know, you have religion and superstition and very, very fine. You could go either way very, very quickly. And she actually, with the permission of her husband, or the support, shall we say, of her husband, took a lady's maid and travelled throughout the Christian world on pilgrimage on her own. And she, I mean, there are probably people here who know the story better than I do at this moment in time, but you know, she was imprisoned for heresy. She was almost burned a few times. She survived all of this and came back home, and completely illiterate, but dictated her autobiography. I think with the help of her son, that's just something that's popped into my head. I think that's the case. You know, basically dictated this autobiography, which we can now read today. So it's one of the earliest, if not the first, autobiography in English. And I mean, I'd never heard of her. Then there's La Morpan, who's also Julie Daubny. I don't do French. And she was a sword-wielding opera singer. She was pardoned by the French king twice. She was openly bisexual. This is 17th century, so openly bisexual in the 17th century. She was married but had a number of lovers, was estranged from her husband, and you know, was a famed opera singer. And the part of her life that we are focusing on is when she entered a convent to be with her lover. And when one of the nuns died, they switched the nun's body into her lover's cell and set fire to the monastery and ran away. So we are we're really interested in these people. You know, they're great sound bites. Another woman is Mary Toft, who is famed for giving birth to rabbits, and she actually was a big celebrity at the time. I think 18th century. She was a peasant. She was very, very poor, but became one of the most well-known women in the country because everyone was saying, yes, she gives birth to rabbits. But when it was found out to be a hoax, many of the physicians' careers were ruined. But then when you read the accounts, she seems very unwell. Just a content warning. She'd had a miscarriage before this hoax happened. You know, who helped her to do this? Was it something she wanted to do? Was she again experiencing postpartum depression? You know, there's so many questions with all of these stories. And so we're not necessarily, you know, it's interesting when you talk about it because it can be quite a humorous soundbite, but actually the songs themselves go a lot more deeply into one snapshot or perceived emotion that might be happening. So the songs themselves relate quite well to today's life, but they are really, really inspired by these extraordinary people who survived absolutely ridiculous things.
Why lemon verbena, Ella? Why lemon for the title?
Lemon verbena. So the Wild Plum Arts Residency was a huge part of this, and it was made at the Red House. It was at Benjamin Britten's house, and we stayed in his housekeeper's little cottage in the grounds, which were absolutely incredible. One of the songs was written on his piano. I had an hour and a half at the piano. I was like, I'm going to write a song at the piano. So I wrote a song, the Mary Toft song, at the piano. It's called Mary and the Rabbit. And when we got there, the Wild Plum Arts looked after us so beautifully. And one of the huge parts of it that I think really related to the subject matter of the album was, as two mothers, you know, very, very knackered after the COVID-19, coming together to be creative. The way that we were looked after at the residency was that we were just fed. We were fed. They didn't care what we came up with. They gave us a space. They gave us nourishment. They gave us emotional support. And there was no need to be anything more than, you've been given this space. We didn't have to tell anyone what we'd created. We were valued as people. We weren't valued as artists. We were valued as people. And one of the gifts that they gave us at the beginning was a bag of dried lemon verbena leaves. It wasn't broken down, just like the large lemon verbena leaves. And we were like, what is this? Oh, it's tea. Just put it in the water. Okay. And we both took a sip of this tea and were just blown away. And we said, can we have more? Can we have more of this tea? And I said, yeah, the plant's right there, just outside Benjamin Britten's back living room door. Go help yourself. So we basically just raided that plant every day and just got as many lemon verbena leaves as we possibly could and just drank lemon verbena tea. And it took a while for us to decide to name it lemon verbena. But when we did decide that, I remember I was finding things a bit difficult, and I went to the supermarket and I was just getting a snack or something, and walked down the tea aisles, and I saw a packet of lemon verbena tea, and I burst into tears. And I was like, yep, that's the album.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, it's meant to be. So it's a passion project, but it's something that we feel free. We have felt free writing it, but also we feel that we're bringing something to life. We are honoring people, exploring our own identities as mothers, exploring our own identities as women, and heritage, ancestry. One of our songs is about wise. It's called Wise Women Vita, and it's about this kind of what we have lost as women due to witch trials, due to transatlantic slave trade, due to sexism, this robbing us of our knowledge, evolutionary knowledge of what it is to be in a female body, what it is to be connected to the moon and menstrual cycles, and what it is to be connected to the earth, what our different stages of life are, childbearing, if that's what you choose to do, or being a grandmother, this kind of loop of how we would support our community and our sisters and our daughters with this knowledge, this evolutionary knowledge that with the witch trials and the destruction of healers, elders, is completely lost to us, and certainly is something that is newly being brought back to life again. And again, with the transatlantic slave trade, I know that my ancestors, I don't know where they're from necessarily. And so Vita is actually my nanny's name, is my middle name, is my daughter's name. It also means life in Italian. So we wanted to honor wise women in general, but also it really came from this idea of this intergenerational story and intergenerational acknowledgement and honoring.
All right.
So yes, yeah.
We'll have to draw this conversation to a close shortly.
Yes.
But just very briefly, Ella, the crowdfunder, you're almost there?
We have just about £600 to raise out of 3,500, so we're doing really well. We've got 5 days left, so we're at that panic stage. Like, we will make it, but we've just got to make it. So we've got 5 days left to raise just under £600. If you type Lemon Verbena Kickstarter into Google, we're at the top because we're chosen as the project we love, Kickstarter project we love, which is amazing. So what I would ask of all of you is if you could share it widely, and if you are in the position to pledge, we have a number of rewards, which would be a digital copy of the album with the lyrics, acknowledgement on the album. We've also got more personal ways of contacting us and being involved with us in terms of pledging as well. So please do take a look at that. Please share widely. If you're able to broadcast it in any way, or would like me to come and talk about it, please also ask me to do that too. Thank you.
Great, lovely. And I see that Amy's very kindly put the link into chat there as well.
Yes,
Ella, that's fantastic. Thanks ever
you
so much. And what a rich sounding project it is and will be. And I hope when it all comes to fruition, we're able to rejoin you and perhaps hear a little bit of it in its finished product when it's all done and dusted, which I'm sure it will be. You'll get that money, no problem. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks ever so much, Ella. Congratulations on a great project. I'm conscious of time. It's 10:20. So before we go to Fliss and find out about her open studio, we're going to hear from Sue Hinde, who is a volunteer at Keswick Museum, who is putting together a project which I'll let her tell you about. So Sue, I've got those 2 pictures you sent me ready to go when you want to, but over to you. We'll slightly squeeze, Sue, so probably about 5 or 6 minutes. Over to you.
Oh, you said I could have 10.
I know.
Right, thank you very much for having me. I'm conscious that I am a volunteer, and that's an interesting element for me in this exhibition. The exhibition actually came about from a U3A textile heritage group that I ran. That we did lots of research, found out lots of things about the Keswick, which is 7 parishes, and then the group folded, but I really did want to use the material, and I'm also a volunteer at Keswick Museum, and they've been so incredibly supportive. It would not have happened without them, encouraging, supportive. So I'd certainly put out a plea, if you have volunteers, I mean, use their talents. Maybe I'm a nerd. I'm quite excited about this exhibition. There's kind of 3 elements to the physical space. One is about linen, the traditional and heritage production of linen, which actually wasn't just Keswick, it was everywhere. It was a cottage industry. People had to make their own linen for their own clothing. I mean, if you had a bit of extra money, you bought it from somebody else. But everybody grew flax. Flax grew everywhere. So the exhibition does look at that. If you want to put up the first picture, Tom, please. So one aspect of the exhibition is this sort of historical element. And here's, I think these are enactors, and they are breaking and hackling, are they? Something like that. Some of the terms are wonderful, not in normal everyday parlance at all now. The next picture, please, Tom. And this is, I've taken this out of a book, and this is another, the process is incredibly complicated. So the lady on the right, and it was always women, is breaking, and the lady on the left is doing sort of further breaking. This is to create the fibers from inside the flax plants. So there's the historical aspect to the exhibition, and we've done that. So linen really only existed locally until shortly into the kind of industrial evolution, when it was mechanized and went elsewhere. Leeds, but interestingly, big manufacturers in Leeds were main benefactors of Keswick. Another aspect to the exhibition is wool. Obviously, people had to create their own linen and their own wool. We could probably understand the production of wool rather more because it's still happening. But again, it was a cottage industry. It was mechanized to a larger scale in Keswick. The last woolen mills closed in about 1826, Applethwaite and Millbeck. But I've done the exhibition so that it features a local farm in St John's in the Vale, Lowbridge End Farm, and they still produce wool as it would have been produced 200 years ago. And I'm just sitting next door to some rather gruesome looking, it's actually fleece. This is Hebridean. I've just washed it this morning because it's got to go into my freezer for 2 weeks before the exhibition goes up. This is Herdwick, of course. Interestingly, that's nearly dry. That's an interesting property of Herdwick fleece. It's itchy and scratchy, but it's nearly dry. This is Teeswater. I don't know if you can't really see all the little curls. And this one's absolutely gorgeous. This is Gotland lamb's wool. So Gotland sheep can be sheared, and William at the farm shears by hand because he has different rare breed sheep and they require clipping at different times of the year. So he can just do small numbers at a time, and he can do them out on the fell, so he doesn't need electric. But what did I say that was? Gotland lamb. He can clip them as lambs, and then he can clip them as yows. The third element of the physical space is we've created a textile trail which follows the River Greta that had 27 mills on it, most of which started life as textile mills, wool probably, but soon were converted to sawmills, bobbin mills, of course, as the wool.
So you just knocked your
yeah, saw that as the wool went. So that's the physical exhibition. Quite excited. It's going up on the 5th of December. There's going to be an exhibition of Ruskin lace. We refer to the Keswick School of Industrial Arts, where they invited Marion Twelves, who came to Langdale to restart the linen industry. They invited her to Keswick to restart a linen industry as part of the Keswick School. She went independent, but we've got examples of Ruskin lace from that time and more modern time. We can actually trace a legacy of local ladies right back to Marion Twelves. So that's, and I've got some of their work. We've got a few bobbins. I mean, there's all sorts of things. The other elements of the exhibition for me, apart from the physical space, which is kind of the historical thing, is obviously the cultural and creative and heritage aspect, which I find fascinating. And the third bit for me is, of course, being almost given a free rein, but well supported as a volunteer. I think volunteers are not always taken seriously, and their skills are not always used. They have to want to use them. And I just find that aspect absolutely thrilling, really, for me.
That's fantastic, Sue. I'm going to jump in there. I've got a really good overview of what it's going to be, I think. Thank you. And, you know, I think they're lucky to have you, frankly, as a volunteer, you know, at Keswick Museum. So, you know, what an amazing project it is you're putting together there, and embracing all those different aspects of local life around Keswick and the different, you know, I think I know the bobbin mill story, but I don't know much else about the sort of textile story of Keswick. So when is it open, sort of through December into January, Sue? that the plan?
Yeah, it's going up on the 5th of December,
Yep.
and it's on until the end of January. The
Okay.
museum is closed for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of January, for redecoration.
Okay, so it'll even be smarter back end of January. All right, well, good luck with it. I know how much, I've done a little bit myself. I know how much hard work is involved in pulling these things together. And if you're doing that out of love and passion, I salute you. With
Thank
all
you.
my heart. So well
Thanks
done.
thanks for the time. Anyway.
Thank you for telling us about it this morning. Right, we are finally going to cross to Little Clifton and Fliss W, as it says in the window. Fliss is an amazing artist. She once drew me outside Florence Art Mind, but on a very bright summer's day, which I know it's very, anyone that had your portrait drawn or painted by someone, it's quite a remarkable experience. And I thoroughly enjoyed it when Fliss did it to me. So enough about me. Fliss, tell us about your open studio.
Hi, Open Studio starts in half an hour, 11 o'clock today, and it's open 11 till 5 today, tomorrow and Sunday at my house, Little Clifton. It's not just me, so if you've seen all my stuff before on Instagram or whatever, there's work by Anne Meller, who is actually my great niece, so we've got a bit of intergenerationality going on. She just started the art and design BTEC at Carlisle College, having done her GCSEs at Cockermouth. She's very talented, and it's very exciting. She wants to go to art school eventually, and I can't believe that somebody else in my family is this mad. But anyway, I'll spin this around and see if you can see that some of her work. Oh, you probably can't see it. Can you see? No, that's the window. Hang on a bit further. Can we see the pictures? There's a picture of fish. That's one of hers, and above it, well, two fish. Sorry, that was not very good. You'll have to come. The other person who's going to be exhibiting work, is he already exhibiting work, is James Chamberlain, who lives in Cockermouth and makes wood furniture and beautiful sewing boxes, incorporating, I've got to look this up on his little leaflet, kumiko, which is a Japanese wood technique of it's like a screen made of lots of little bits of wood in geometric patterns. They're in the other part of the house, so I can't show you those as badly as I just tried to show you Anne's work. The other thing is that I have produced a little book with Coldview Press, which is of the essay that I wrote for my earlier exhibition about climate change and art, and some other blog posts that followed on from it, expanded a bit, edited a bit, and made into a little booklet. So, and I learnt on the call this morning from Phil at Coldview Press that he has actually received the actual book. This is the proof copy. So there's a box of them in Carlisle at the moment, waiting to get to me by some means. So if anybody wants one of these, you can pre-order over the weekend when you come to the Open Studio. Is there anything else I need to say? I put my address in the...
Today's Saturday and Sunday, right?
Today, Saturday and Sunday, 11 till 5. Little Clifton.
Roughly where is Little Clifton?
Little Clifton is about halfway between Cockermouth and Workington, just off the big roundabout where you would turn left to go to Whitehaven if you were going that way. Or right, if you were coming from Workington to... Anyway. My address is in the chat with my postcode, which should get you within spitting distance of the house.
Will your lovely greyhound make an appearance?
Oh, I expect so, yes. She was here earlier, but she was threatening to bark at me, so I dispatched her downstairs.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And, you know, you've undersold your own stuff there as well. You do amazing images, and I think you're doing a bit of sculpturing now these days as well with wire, aren't you?
I've been working on a welded steel cormorant for my neighbours down the road who've got a beautiful garden and needed something to stand on a plinth in the garden. And we decided this was the thing. And they deliver my Guardian every week on Saturdays. Keith goes to get his paper, he gets mine and delivers it to me. And I've been paying them in money or sometimes in small pieces of art as I accumulate debt. And we've decided that this is a lifetime supply of Guardians and it's going to be called the Guardian. So I'm not sure whose lifetime, mine, theirs, the sculpture, who knows. The Guardian, I mean, maybe it will go bust, but...
who needs currency when you've got art?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, good luck with it. Hope it goes well.
Thank you.
For you, Fliss.
Yes, please come, everybody.
I intend to get there on Sunday if I possibly can. So thank you very much. Thank you to Lorraine, to Joanna, to Ella, to Fliss, to Sue. Anybody I've missed out, I apologise. kind of what an amazing set of people you are, making amazing things here in Cumbria and beyond. We're just lucky to have this stuff going on, and I think part of the work of the network is just to share the messaging and share the collaboration and share the networking so that more people know about this stuff, and anything that you can do to help spread that message and promulgate those wonderful stories, then please do. Thank you this morning to everybody. Next week, Amy Bateman, who's behind the 40 Farms book, is going to come and talk to us because she's looking for some more exhibition space once it's finished at Reg Ed. We're going to hear from Beck Stamper, who's going to talk about the new West Cumbria cultural strategy and also progress on the Helping Hands project, which is about volunteering. I think they're getting to a new stage of work as well, so we're going to hear about that too. So lots of stuff going on. Thank you for your time this morning, everybody. Hopefully see you again soon.